Speak of the devil, and it shall appear.
We're not here because we're free. We're here because we're not free. There's no escaping reason, no denying purpose, because as we both know, without purpose, we would not exist.
Gee, Ray, what do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
My God, it would be beautiful.
This is the World Magic Movement. Tonight's episode, Encounters.
Well, this is Saul Ravencraft, and I am talking to S. Rob.
Hello, S. Rob. Hello, S. Rob here.
Yes. So we're going to take another journey here. You're going to transport our audience again. Help me to understand what it is that we're doing.
What we'll actually be doing is thinning the borders between this realm and hell. So that means we're going to be using Hermes.
Which we've done before.
We've done before, yeah. And there'll be a ritual using Hermes, and this will basically thin the borders to the outside of the room. It means the person shouldn't leave that room for the duration of the show, although they can skip to a ritual at the end if they want to, which will transport them back. But we're doing this while broadcasting into hell. And I think this makes it very interesting because it increases the chances of people getting sightings, of things. It increases the chances of it because some people, of course, have windows in their room, so that increases the chances of that. So we're doing both. It's being broadcast into hell while at the same time the people watching it are being, their room is being sent to hell.
So what changes by doing these two things together?
The main thing is that they're going to be aware that the people are being transported. And that means, I have said in the video, some people may want to put perhaps a door under a doorknob, something like that. But the thing is as well, though, is that when we're thinning the borders, we're probably not going to get a complete sending of a room to hell. It's probably that the outside is going to be some combination of the normal outside and hell. It does mean the person shouldn't leave that room because if they come in, they may not be able to get back in the same room. They may be moving simply into a hell version of it. But by doing this, because they know that these rooms are being transported to hell, it should have a more powerful effect. There may be demons and devils that are able to go up to these rooms and may knock on windows and talk to people. So we're hoping for a much stronger effect because of that, because they know what's going on their side.
Now, we've been poking our nose into hell quite a bit lately. Are they looking for us now?
Well, this is the thing, isn't it? They do know about the World Magic Movement because we've been transmitting and broadcasting into there quite a lot. But I also feel, I feel we're all really known in hell. Because whether we like it or not, we've all got aunties and uncles or relatives or friends that have ended up there, So we're all known, really. It's not like any of us are truly unknown there. But the difference with this is I'm trying to push the envelope a little bit further. So what we're really doing is we're trying to get some contact back. It's not like a seance where we're actually asking for contact. All we're simply doing is we're leaving it there so if they want to, they can. That's an interesting thing. I mean, I didn't mention it, but last time I did this, I did actually see something through a window. I don't know if I mentioned it or not, but just very slightly. Now, I feel we can get a stronger effect through using these together. And it's also interesting as well. It's an interesting thing. We're trying to truly knock down boundaries.
Sure.
Because I don't feel there's enough trade and thing between here and hell. If we think of hell like another country, this is something that could be a trading partner with Earth.
What would we trade with each other?
That's the thing. I suppose it would be information, wouldn't it? Information, maybe even people. Because if we class the people in hell, some of them as hostages, we could maybe trade them into heaven, maybe. Anything's possible, but I suppose it would be information, wouldn't it? It would be a sharing of information and technologies backwards and forwards, I mean, I would imagine in hell we would have many things that could make it more comfortable there.
Well, I suppose there are some people that would say that these information centers are already run by the devil.
Yeah, well, you know, you look at Earth, it does seem that way, doesn't it?
So, is there anything that our listeners need to do to prepare for this experience? Should they do something a little extra because of the changes that we're doing today?
Most important thing is, if you need to go to the bathroom, you know, you do it before the ritual. You can't do it after the ritual. You've got to do it beforehand.
The bathrooms in hell are not very nice.
Exactly, yeah. Possibly food and drink. I would imagine limit the drink. You may want, if you don't have a lock on a door, you may want to put a chair underneath it. Yeah. You may want to take a notebook if you have a window to note anything you see outside. You know, we're expecting a stronger effect, so you have to be properly prepared for it.
Sure. Well, how long is it going to take to do this?
It'll be a short ritual, and then the room will then be transported, and then at the end of the show, there'll be a ritual to transport it back again. So people won't be staying there, don't worry. You don't stay in hell. It's just that you've got to know to do the last ritual to send it back.
And again, we will have a sort of an emergency link, so if someone needs to remove themselves, that they can play that and immediately come back.
Exactly, yeah. They can immediately play the last part if they need to.
All right. Well, I hope you know what you're doing.
Well, I'm going to do it now. Hi, this episode is going to be broadcasting to hell, but also we're going to transport the room you're in to hell. To be precise, I'm going to perform a ritual which will thin the border between the outside of your room and hell. I'll be using Hermes, who is a Greek god and a guide to the underworld, so he's ideal to use for this. Now, once this is done, you really shouldn't leave this room. And the reason is twofold, because one, you could be leaving the room and then go back and find you can't get back. You'd be going to a hell version of it, okay? That means that if you want to go to the toilet or do anything, this is the time, okay? This is the time to stop the video and then do that and then come back. You can't skip this section if you really want to, this short section. But it thins the border, okay? This means that there's a double effect. This means that when you look outside, if there's a window in your room, you may well see outside. It may not look as it did before. Now, because the border is thinned, it doesn't mean outside would necessarily be completely hell. It means they'll be integrated together. So it's perfectly possible you may have a devil or a demon knocking on your window pane. It's also possible it may just look slightly different, or it may look completely different. It depends how much it works. But you need to bear in mind that this episode is also broadcast into hell, and that means quite honestly that the devils, those in hell, will be hearing this, and as your room appears there, they will know what this is all about, okay? So keep all doors bolted and shut of your house generally, and keep the doors shut in the room. You may also want, if you want to put perhaps a door under the doorknob if you can, or something against the door. But you know, you can skip to the last section, which will put it all back as it was if you really want to. But I'm going to do this ritual now. Hermes, powerful Greek god. Your power over all borders, and you're a guide to the underworld. Hermes, I ask that you thin the border to the outside of this room, the room where we are watching. Thin the border between this realm and hell itself. Thin the border between this realm and hell. Thin the border more. Thin the border until it is barely there at all. Hermes thins the border, he thins the border more. He thins the border and it is barely there at all. My name is S. Rob, and I am talking to Freddie Valentine.
Hello, Freddie Valentine here. Good afternoon, good evening, good day, wherever you are, whatever time you're listening.
Great to see you, Freddie.
And you, mate. And you, mate.
And we're here to talk about alien abductions.
Yes.
Yeah, I thought I'd describe first what it is because there's some technical definitions and I don't want to get caught in that. Because some people define an alien abduction as someone who's abducted by aliens to an alien spacecraft. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't know what all alien spacecrafts look like. You know? I mean, I'm not really sure I know how spacecrafts look like. So our definition is very simple. We're just going to think about people that are abducted by aliens. That's all we're looking at, okay? We're not getting into technical definitions of it. It is as simple as it sounds.
Yeah.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this is, if you look just at the modern alien abductions, is that a lot of the evidence seems to be things that people have remembered far after the fact. You know, it's not things that people have been abducted, then they've told somebody. A lot of it has been things that have happened afterwards. So I suppose there's a lot of complicated mental drivers in this whole phenomena as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's very important. But I actually remember something when I was a kid. I was about 5 at the time. I don't know if I mentioned this before, but it does tie in nicely with this. And at that point in time, what there was actually the steelworks where they had been destroyed. It was just being like knocked down. It was like an old industrial town, and they'd knocked down the steelworks. So at the time, it looked like basically you dropped a bomb. Now, on this year was 1980, and at that time, there was actually a saucer went right, well, not necessarily straight above, but above the house. Now, my mother actually watched it for quite a while, and it was darting around, and we were all showing it, and we sat there for hours, and it was darting around, you know, erratically, and it was basically, you know, a metallic disc. I think it had, like, windows in it. But an interesting thing about this is, it wasn't until years later I realised there was a guy who was abducted, but in Yorkshire. And if you look at it, it's quite a well-known one, this one. So it went over the top and darted around a bit. I would imagine it went there to look at the steelworks because, when you know, if anyone who's seen one of the old type industrial buildings when they're knocked down, it looks like a war zone. You know, it doesn't look good until they sort it out. So it went over there to have a look, and it went down and it abducted this guy who was a policeman in Yorkshire. But it wasn't. Now, when you see abductions now, alien abductions, people tend to think about, you know, grey aliens and things like that. It actually wasn't. What he said he was abducted by was human entities, but very tall.
Yeah.
Not the Nordics that had brown hair. They didn't have the light-coloured hair, blue eyes. But they wore large robes, and one claimed that he was, I think it once said he was Jesus. So... Right. That's an unusual abduction story that guy had. I mean, I feel sorry for the guy, I really did, because there was a lot of us saw it go overhead, and we had no loss of time or anything like that. We were the lucky ones. You know, we were one of the vast bulk of people that see them and nothing happens. And he, unfortunately, was the one that wasn't lucky. You know.
Yeah, you hear a lot of stories like this. I mean, there's a story that I heard locally in a local paper. This guy, he was in a bar, just having a drink in a pub. Next minute, he's just completely blanked out, doesn't remember it. And when he woke up, he was round this guy's house in his bed. And he said to his wife, you know, I think I was abducted by aliens. I don't know how I got there. And he was naked around this fella's house, you know. And the aliens had dropped him in this bloke's random person's house.
Yeah, I think that might be a different sort of abduction, Freddie.
But well, he said that aliens might have probed him because his backside was hurting. So, you know what I mean? That's what he told his wife. You know, he said 1 minute he's in the bar and he all blanked out. And then he woke up in this strange person's house, doesn't know who they were. And the aliens had dropped him there, and his backside was hurting because he felt that the aliens had done a probe on him. That's what he's saying. It's in the local paper.
Yeah. I think that's a great story for him to tell his wife, actually.
Yeah, that's what he told his wife. But, you know, he swears blind that it's an alien abduction. The bits of it come back to him.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt about it. The alien abduction stories are strange. I mean, there isn't any normal ones, is there, really?
No, I mean, you get most of these American ones. You know, in a field, as a farmer. There's quite a few in the UK. I mean, the ones in the UK aren't publicised as much, you know, because I think in Britain we don't like to talk about things like that too much in case people think we're a bit odd, you know, so people don't go on the news so much. They tend to be quiet about it, whereas in America, people freely sort of talk about this because they seem to want to get on television more than we do. So, but there are quite a lot of stories. If you look it up, there's quite a lot of UK alien abduction stories, you know, but they're not as publicised as much.
Yeah, I think it's because people over here don't think they can spin it into a career. Where in America, they're probably thinking, okay, I'm an abductee, I can probably get on some documentaries, you know, I may get to do the lecture circuit, but over here, I can't really see, you know, someone getting to be an after-dinner speaker because they were abducted.
No, in
Maybe,
America, you'll probably get on a few chat shows, you'll probably write a book about it, you'll probably sell a lot of that book, you'll probably have a film made of that book and make quite a lot of publicity, fame, money from it. In the UK, you'll probably end up on This Morning and Philip Schofield and the other one will take the piss out of you, and Holly, take the piss out of you for 10 minutes, and that's the end of it, the end of the whole thing.
That's right, yeah. You're right, yeah. I mean, there is something interesting that I got when I was writing the book. It was one of the books I think I wrote about aliens and things like that, but it was like from an occult aspect. And it was about how to astral project to contact these aliens. And now, obviously, whether you accept astral projection is a fact or not, I did get some interesting information, something that's interesting. Yeah. And it was the grey aliens seem to have a martial art. But it's not as we think of a martial art. In actual fact, what you're talking about is a martial art that is about pushing. See, our martial arts seem to be one person fighting another person, or one person fighting many. Where this was a reverse. It was basically lots of them, enabling them to fight one much larger opponent. And it was basically based on pushing and basic techniques like that, you know. Not at all what you would call elaborate or at all like we would have, you know. But it was an interesting idea, yeah. And they seem to have a structure as well. They seem to be at the centre, from what I could see, at the centre of their cities, you've got the high status people. And on the outside, you've got the ones that are classed as genetically inferior, not quite right, and they're put on the outside. But what I found as well was that they had an unusual concept of art. To them, art is just something to do to something that's already there. So instead of when we may think of art as like a painting that really doesn't have any other purpose other than to be a painting, they would take a radiator and say, okay, how can we make design this radiator so it looks great, and really it's just a radiator. So they put it onto something they already have, and maybe make this great big elaborate radiator for not really much purpose other than to want this radiator to display something. And they seem to walk around looking at these things, you know, with different concepts of things, yeah. But, I mean, there's quite a few different types of aliens in the past that we don't talk about. Obviously, you've got the Greys, but you've got, like, the tall Nordic type ones. You've got the reptilian type ones that we'll think about. But you could also think about descriptions of the fairy folk and things like this, you know, small beings. Because really because they were basically abducting people. If you look at the folk tales, if you accept them as fact, which you maybe wouldn't, but they're basically abducting people away, you know, to their land, which is an abduction. You know, it's just a matter of what times that you live in that you see it, you know. Do you see it as an alien spacecraft, or do you see it as the land of the fairy folk? You know, how do you think about it? It's just about how you think about it in the times that you live in, you know.
Yeah, I mean, the grey aliens are kind of more of a modern thing. It's like, since Close Encounters and all that kind of stuff, that's when there's more reports of grey aliens. And if you look at the reports from like the 50s or the 40s even, there's alien abductions or sightings then, they tend to be very Nordic type people, very tall, blonde, like humanoid form, you know, teaching them, you know, all these revelations about how man should be good to each other and all that kind of stuff. And that is what they were like then. If you look at the sort of early reports of aliens, they're more humanoid. But if you look at the ones from, say, the 70s onwards, they're very much the grey alien type of sightings and abductions. Yeah. So it does change. You know, I suppose whatever era you're in, there's different types of aliens. Yeah. I suppose, you know, whether it's a collective imagination or whether there's different aliens visiting at those certain periods in time. Who knows? Yeah, because that's the thing, really. When you're talking about this, you're really dealing with the concept that there isn't any physical evidence. And by that I mean that all evidence has to be viewed as a human experience, whether it be an experiment or whether it be, you know, like a table that you may be sitting at. It's really just about you experiencing that. You know, it's the whole idea that how do you know that you're seeing? You don't. You know, if all insane, so you don't know if anything's right or not. It's just a matter of recording people's experiences, really. You think now with like smartphones and all this kind of stuff, everybody's got a phone on them at all times, that you would be able to get more footage of aliens than in the past, because you've got a camera. I mean, often, years ago, if you're saying the 70s or 80s, if you're out in the field and you saw a UFO, it's unlikely that you'd have a camera with you unless you're a photographer. But these days, we've all got cameras with us and we've all got video recorders in our pockets, so it's probably much more easier to get footage. Unless, of course, the aliens can jam these devices and stop them from working. Maybe the aliens, the energy from the radiation or whatever from the ship may affect your smartphone and stop it from working. But if it doesn't, it's going to be much more easy to get evidence, I suppose, photographic or film evidence of them these days than ever before because of the technology we've got.
Yeah, I think the thing is, there's a lot of bad photographs out there. There's a lot of photographs that are being in video that are obviously being made up, that aren't real. That's a problem as well, isn't it? Really, yeah.
Yeah, Photoshop and whatnot. Now you can make very realistic-looking photos with that. Photoshop. Yeah. Like there's that thing with the Roswell autopsy, and that was a faked, hoaxed video. Do you know what I mean? So there's that. Yeah. There's things like that. You can do it very well these days. Even like films, you can make it on your home computer. You can make a very decent-looking bit of footage.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose. I remember something that someone I knew did, and that is he did something with a full stop. And all he did was he took a picture and he put a full stop on it, like a white one, and he blurred the edges. And he did it to show how easy it would be to do a fake UFO photo. And everyone went mad. Oh, yes, this is obviously a true UFO photo and all this. I think it was on a Bub Top Secret or something he put it on. And then he said, no, it isn't actually. I just did it. It's just a full stop. And he showed them how he did it. And that's all it was. He just took a full stop and blurred the edges. There was nothing more to it than that, but people see what they want to see.
Exactly, it's, I say, these days you can, I've seen some amazing footage out there, and some of it does look very realistic, but you can know whether it's some trickery going on there, or people are very good at technology.
That's right, yeah. I mean, I also think as well the idea that these things always have to come from outer space, and you think, well, do they really, or could they come from somewhere much nearer and closer than that? I mean, we don't even know everything that's on this planet.
No,
new species new species are discovered all the time. It's perfectly possible that what we're talking about are simply things that live where we, or at least on our planet. Under the sea would be possible, underground as well. I mean, if you look at geology, we've extrapolated a lot from very little information, but can't really go very far down in terms of geology. So, there's a lot could be under there that we don't know about.
So, definitely. And also like on the ocean, there's still creatures that we don't really know. We're discovering new species in the real depths of the ocean every single week. There's new things coming up,
Exactly, yeah. These things happen all the time. And of course, we shouldn't forget the much mocked Little Green Man, because people forget there was a lot of sightings of little green men.
Yeah.
And people forget it because it became sort of a joke. But there was a lot of sightings of little green men. There was a hell of a lot, And then it just sort of moved on to another type. That's how it seems to work. It seems to move on, Maybe that suggests that a lot of these things really are something quite different, that it's only about how we see it. So if you see a grey alien, maybe that's just your projection of it. It could look something completely different,
Yeah, exactly. So it depends how. I assume, if there are aliens travelling here, from different planets, I mean, there'd be different species. And the same way we've got different species on this planet. Do you know what I mean? We've got lions, we've got chimpanzees, elephants, and us. Different species. There could be different aliens that look different. They're complete different species. Like you watch these things like Star Wars, all the different aliens there and that, they all look different. There could be different aliens visiting us from different planets. That's why there's so many sightings of different things. Some are small, some are large, some are humanoid, some aren't. Yeah,
it brings you on to the Chupacabra, doesn't it?
Yeah.
The goat sucker, because that's said by a lot of people to be an alien. Some people believe the Chupacabra is some sort of government experiment. But it has settled more or less on one appearance, because there was a lot of different descriptions, but it seems now that the Chupacabra has one sort of look which people think that it looks like, And that's an interesting thing as well, because what role would the Chupacabra play? Would the Chupacabra be an intelligent species? Or would it be a pet?
Yeah. Exactly. You don't know what these things are or why they're here.
I suppose the thing is, though, is that normally we feel so secure normally because we're separate. You know, even I don't know about you, but when you see a UFO, and lots of people have, or a saucer, you do feel quite secure because you know you're down here, it's up there, and you know the chances of anything happening are probably quite small because you feel separate. Although it's in this world, you feel separate, you know. And I suppose that's the difference with the situation now, because the people who are watching this, the border has been thinned between the outside of their room and hell, and it's also been broadcast into hell, which means the things that exist in that realm, not just do they know that rooms are being sent there, but to the same extent, the people there know that as well, and that must be affecting how people think, you know. I would imagine that, I mean, I know not you, but, you know, I feel a little bit on edge, you know, and I feel there will be as well, because, you know, it's right there. I mean, it's possible something could be outside knocking to get in. You know, there could be a noise. There could be, you know, some sort of a demon at somebody's window, and these are all things that are possible. Which, when you think about it, that's why I warn people at the start to make sure things are secure. If you can, put maybe a chair under a doorknob to secure the room, because this isn't like we did it before when we've broadcast into hell or when we have thinned the border. We're doing both. So the outside of your room could literally be completely in hell, or like it's not, it'll be to a degree in hell and to a degree in this world. But the fact that they know you're there, and as this is being broadcast and as you're playing it, they're hearing it, and they're going to be looking for this and looking for these rooms, you know, it does, you know, mean this thing we've been talking about abduction is a real danger if people aren't careful.
Exactly.
Yeah,
you've got to be careful.
People have to be careful. Like I said, I warned everybody. If you don't have the door locked, try to put a chair under the doorknob. Try to secure yourself now, okay? Because it's okay to see them. It's okay even to hear them. You know, if you hear anybody knocking on the outside of your door or your wall, it's perfectly possible it could be somebody from another realm, not from here at all. But it's a good exploration because it proves that, you know, certainly if we get feedback, that this doesn't have to be a one-way thing. Because if we can transport even just some of the rooms completely to hell, that means that we could abduct them. You know,
exactly.
We can change it the other way around, because we tend to sort of sit here and hope that that no alien, you know, sort of invades our borders and, you know, snatches somebody away. But what if we could snatch them away? You know, it changes it, doesn't it? We could maybe get information from them. You know, we can get information from what I suppose would be the enemy. Because let's be honest, I don't think at this moment that hell's really a good trading partner with us. I think it could be. But, you know, as it stands at the moment, it's more like a hostile force. Yes, a lot of us end up there for small things, you know, like overeating or pride or something like this, which aren't really, to me, big things, you know. But this could switch it all round.
Exactly.
We could be abducting them.
Exactly. It's such there's so many conflicting stories about it all as well that it's hard to work out.
It is, yeah. Yeah, I think the thing is, people sometimes, with this sort of subject, I think you've got to break it down in some way. And people don't really like to do that, to sort of split it down to a smaller part, you know, and try to work from that. But yeah, I mean, a lot of these people seem to... But the thing is, a lot of believers in these abductions, that's the thing. I suppose it's like all rare events. It would be easy to take any rare event and to say that it wasn't real because they're rare. You know what I mean? Because the chances are you haven't experienced it yourself. You know, it's like bank robberies. I've never actually seen a bank robbery. You know, I've always managed to avoid them. So when you think about it, I could make probably the same argument against bank robberies as I could against alien abductions, you know, because I've never seen one. You know, it's the same thing. I could say that it was an urban myth that don't really happen, you know, because I haven't seen it.
Of course, I mean, you go by experience of stuff. I mean, it's like, you know, with an alien experience, you know, you may look at that and think, yeah, well, I'm open-minded, but until you've actually seen it, you can't really, you know, say you 100% believe until you've experienced it yourself. So, you know, who's to say people haven't experienced it themselves? They may well have done.
Yeah, because when you think about it, I can't really imagine that many governments would really want people to know, if it was true, that they could be abducted by aliens. I can't see they'd want people to know that.
It's the fear as well, do you know what I mean? I think that, you know, a lot of religions sort of say there's no life on other planets apart from Earth, and it kind of discredit all of that as well, which would cause a lot of hassle, because some people are very fanatical about religion, so something like that would probably upset the apple cart, so to speak, so it's probably best to keep it in there.
Yeah, the thing is, as well, though, religions are based on, to some extent, on fear. It helps people keep them in line if they're afraid of something. And the trouble is with this, it gives people a different set of things to be afraid of, things that are in many ways quite religious. Do you know what I mean? This could become a rival religion.
It could easily, yeah, and I think people start to, there'll be weird reaction to aliens. If aliens did land tomorrow and say, look, you know, we're from another planet, you get people that would embrace them, you get people that would worship them, but also you get people that would discriminate against them, do you know what I mean, and see them as invaders.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose really that the way to proceed is with caution. That's the thing, whenever you can, you know. But like I said, I think it's interesting, this experiment we're doing now, that hopefully we'll get some solid proof. Because, of course, in reality, it's quite possible that some of these things that are being labelled as aliens, as in from space, are actually interdimensional beings. It's perfectly possible that what we're really talking about are demons.
That's possible, do you know what I mean? There could be transdimensional beings or time travellers even. You know, there's been talking of being time travellers in the future, or people that have evolved, you know, humans that have evolved beyond that.
Exactly, yeah. And what this means as well to me is that if anyone sees anything, if what they see in any way matches a description of some sort of space or something that is described normally as a space alien, that to me is solid proof that there's at the very least a crossover between what's described as a space alien and interdimensional beings and even demons.
Yeah.
So, of course, if anyone sees anything or hears anything at all, you know, do get back to us at the World Magic Movement. You'll see there's links below. There's places you can contact us, you know, and that would be a very good thing to do. It's very positive. It helps to, you know, expand the realm of psychical research and paranormal research.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Okay, my name's S. Rob, and I've been talking to Freddie Valentine.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Thank you.
My name's S. Rob, and I'm talking to Saul Ravencraft.
Hello, S. Rob.
Hello, Saul.
Well, we're in hell, it seems.
Yes, that's right, and that's an important point that people realise, that while we're doing this, you know, we're in the same ship that you're in. You know, because otherwise people can think, oh, that's okay for them, but, you know, we're in the same boat that you're in at the present moment in time, you know. You know, we both watch The Ritual and things like this. We're in the same ship that you're in at this present moment.
Yes. Yes, which is always exciting.
Yeah.
So you and Freddie were talking about alien abductions.
Yeah, that's right.
And I have not really spoken to anyone who has been abducted. I have spoken to people who have had a number of encounters in various ways. Everything from encounters that are clearly demonic to things that are connections with things like Bigfoot and other kinds of connections. I spoke one time to a man named Bill Bean. He had a frightening encounter with demonic entities that pursued him since he was a child, pursued him and his entire family since he was a child. And some very frightening incidents, including physical harm, that came with these. Very, very frightening stuff. I also spoke to Father Andrew Calder, who was an exorcist a number of times. And both of these men described in great detail encounters they had had with demonic forces. They felt them to be real and had no doubts that they were actually doing battle with a force of evil that was trying to influence and harm the world.
Yeah.
Force.
I mean, I actually,
Go ahead.
I actually feel that that's an important point there, because some people tend to take I suppose the folk story idea, the cartoon idea, the animated fairy tale, that all these things are really nice and they just look strange. And the truth is, some of these things aren't nice. People's instincts a lot of the time are right, because people's first instinct is to run. But people get taught, oh no, these things are okay and some of them are nice, but you've actually got nothing to lose by running. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You don't. You have nothing to lose by running away.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I have not necessarily pursued demonic connections myself, partly because of the testimonies I've received from these gentlemen and a couple other folks I've talked to who have dealt with that. I have done blessings and clearings and cleansings and protections to try and keep nasties out. And perhaps my work with that has kept me fairly stable and kept me fairly protected from those kinds of encounters. Yeah. I'm not sure what I would want to do with an encounter. I guess if I was in a situation where I knew someone was being harmed and I had the opportunity to make that connection and do something about it, I would be willing to do that. But I don't know if my curiosity takes me there quite at this point.
Yeah. Well, I'm sort of the opposite. I've probably summoned every devil and demon that exists.
Well, vive la différence.
Yeah, not just the ones in the books, but people ask you to do things to get them out of problems. And there's all sorts of things that have been classified as devils over the years, things that are being made by the Romans when they slaughtered children. There's loads of these things that are demonic. And I must have done practically all of them at one point in time, so I must have summoned every one of them that probably know me by first. And nobody knows me by first.
There are people that have been conditioned to feel that any encounter that they have that is paranormal is demonic in some way. I can't count the number of times that I've had people sort of exercise me in their head when they see my tarot cards or find out that I have Ouija boards or that I have done any kind of spirit connection or connection with any kind of entity. It frightens them to think of connections like that, and they assume that any kind of connection that happens must be demonic, must be a devil.
Yeah. Yeah, you know what that reminds me of? An old folk tale. And it's like all these old folk tales called the Devil's Bridge. And a lot of these early bridges, not the Roman ones and stuff like this, but the ones like the medieval or something like that, at that point they'd sort of lost the ability to make good bridges. So they always thought the idea was that the devil made the bridge, and it was the old story was there was an old woman, she needed to get a sheep and she couldn't get it because there was a lake in the middle. So the devil said, I will build a bridge, but the first thing that goes across, I get its soul. So the bridge gets built and she whistles, and a dog runs across, and of course the devil, being unhappy, goes away. But it's like all these folk tales, Saul, it's always the devil. It's not a devil, it's not demonic. They always assume that the actual devil himself went down in this place. It was never just some devil, or some demon somewhere and said, go down to Texas somewhere. I don't know, just go down to Texas and hassle some people. It always has to be the devil. It says a lot about humanity, doesn't it? We always assume, the devil himself is going to be the one that's going to want to go to that particular place where we are. It's our own built-in sense of importance,
he could
isn't
accomplish
it?
more if he could learn to delegate.
Exactly, yeah, but there's so many of the devils, that it's always the devil. But you're right, it's the same as, I always feel, one of the advantages with the way I do occultism is because I haven't tried to draw what most occultists have, which I think is a mistake, a big master plan of devils. Because what happens is that they end up putting everything which is unusual or everything which could be thought of as monstrous as being a devil. And that's what I feel is a mistake. And yet we find that a lot where they try to put Egyptian entities and deities and all sorts of things, and everything becomes a devil. And that really doesn't, like I agree with you before, it doesn't make much sense. And that's one of the biggest mistakes I think I've managed to avoid in my books. You know, I don't try to make this master plan where everything has to be a devil or an angel. Because it's a very Christian outlook, isn't it? You know, I think I was brought up as a Catholic. I don't know if you were, but it's a very sort of Christian outlook, isn't it? That if it's intelligence and it isn't us, it must be an angel or a devil, and that's it. You know, and you look at it, does it have wings? No, it is not an angel, it is a devil, and that's it. It's just,
and it ties into our human need to turn everything into an equation. And I think that is a mistake when you deal with more spiritual aspects of the universe. Is it doesn't adhere to our physical laws necessarily. It doesn't connect with our reality precisely. We're likely talking about beings and entities that cross between planes, that cross between dimensions, and they don't have to play by our rules.
Yeah, exactly. It's a bit like in Durham. I don't know if you will know this, but there's a place in England called Durham, and there's a bridge there. It's outside of what most people would class as the centre. And there was a sighting of a Roman soldier, a guy dressed as a Roman soldier, and then he disappeared. Now, it depends how you view that, because some people would view that as a ghost. Some people would view it as a time slip, but some people would say, well, he's obviously demonic. He must be a demon because, you know, he's not human because, you know, obviously he can't appear and disappear like that. He's not an angel. You know, it's that concept that you have to fit everything into that devil sort of category, or devil-demon category. You know, and I wonder why people do that, because it really makes no sense. If you're a person who is a Christian, surely you do not want the situation where there is a finite number of angels and yet the amount of devils is ever increasing. Because surely, if you look at it that way, you can't win. The only logical thing will be to change sides and become a Satanist. You know, it just doesn't make logical sense. If you keep making the other side larger, you know, I mean, if you can't beat them, join them. That's what they say.
Well, and I think that, like many things, people adjust information to fit their data set. I see this all the time with people who are paranormal debunkers. Yeah. This idea doesn't exist, can't exist, therefore I'm going to translate it into this thing that I accept. And I'll just throw out the other idea. And we all do that to some degree. People, I mean, I did that before I went down the rabbit hole when I had a more skeptical outlook. Things that did not fit into my worldview, I would either discard, oh, that person is lying, didn't know what they were talking about, they're stupid, and I know a truth. Or I would redefine it. I would say, well, okay, this is a noise, this is what that noise could be, therefore it is. Yeah. I remember when I really first had my approach challenged was at the Menger Hotel in San Antonio, Texas. I was with a friend of mine, and we had an incident where a television turned itself on. And I immediately said, well, that's not that special. There's some stray infrared signal that bounced off of a radar detector passing by or something like that. And it happened to turn the TV on. I mean, that's not that big a deal. That's not very supernatural. And my friend said, you always do that. You always come up with an answer. You just said that a passing car happened to send out just the right RF code to turn that TV on, and it happened to bounce around in just the right way to hit that thing to turn it on. Your answer isn't necessarily more logical than a ghost did it, you just like your answer better. And it totally called me out. I had never thought about that before, that what I would do is I would draw for solutions that I had heard and that kind of thing, and I would make them fit. But I didn't apply the same statistical reason to those that I would demand for the paranormal explanation. And he forced me to begin to observe things more directly rather than filtering them through my ideas. And I think that's the kind of thing. People who have been trained into the idea of devils and angels, and that's the way it is, they don't necessarily have another way to view those things, and so they automatically filter it into what they know. And of course, the only way to adjust that is to broaden your knowledge, broaden the possibilities. Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting, actually, because that happens a lot with me. As you know, I created an entity called S. Rob Invictus. I'm S. Rob, he's S. Rob Invictus. And he's been used by people, he's been seen in various places. He's like basically a version of me without a human body, without the disadvantages we have. But an interesting thing is, when he's around, he turns on the TV when I finish writing, and he turns it off when I'm going to write. So I don't even, if I don't have the remote, he just turns it on and off when I need to. Yeah, and that's there, but unless you do something, you can't experience them. That sort of thing. I think it would have helped them, people, get to that state. But there's also the thing about the idea of physical evidence, because you always get this double standard. Like if I applied the same standard to them, to like science, as they apply to the paranormal, it would be, okay, I have discovered another planet, and it would yourself, it would be using an equation to find out where it was. So if I was doing the same thing as they were, I'd say, okay, but you have to take me there. How do I know that's real? You have to take me there, and you have to prove to me the position of this planet, in relation to the other one. And then you have to prove to me that it wasn't there before and recorded, and of course it would be impossible. But that's not how it's done. A lot of this stuff is done using mathematics. And it's the same sort of idea. And the idea of physical evidence, like it's an actual table. I always say all there is human experience. Because everything has to be experienced. And so the concept that someone has an experiment and he's done this, and therefore, but it's not really physical proof, because unless someone's experienced it, it doesn't exist. You don't know about it. Which means saying 6 people have done an experiment to me and have done this experiment and it worked is no more reliable than 6 people saying they've seen a dog-headed man. Because it's the same thing. It's just human experience, That's all it is, yeah. Well, and my favorite example of that is the famous Patterson-Gimlin film of Bigfoot. You're familiar with that film, the one, it's a very short film, and Bigfoot is walking along in the woods. It was done in late 60s. Yeah. And Bigfoot kind of turns and looks at the camera, and it's been an object of intense study by a lot of people, and there's a lot of interesting information. And then at one point, it was suddenly declared a hoax by the skeptical community because there was a guy who claimed to be involved with it who said it was a suit. And he saw that it was a suit, and they said, see, there's a guy who said it was a suit, so it was a suit. And no one said, okay, do you have the suit? Do you have a receipt for the suit? Can you show me a picture in the catalog where the suit came from? Can you provide any kind of physical evidence about this suit? And that kind of standard doesn't seem to get applied to that. We believe that it could have been done this way. Really? Show me. Do it. Yeah. Duplicate it. Well, you can't duplicate it because it's a fluke. It was just a 1 in a million thing that happened at one time. Wow. That the thing is actually programmed trying to duplicate. It's actually a program trying to duplicate it, and it looked nothing like it.
And that proves it. Because they had a pro and they're going to do this, and this guy's an expert and he can do this. And it looked nothing like it at all. It looked like a guy in a suit. And the other one doesn't. You know, it was so obviously not the same thing. And I think that program did a good, I don't know if you find it, but I think it did a really big favour, because people may have thought it's a man in a suit, but when you put the version of someone who did it, who tried to do it as a man in a suit, you can clearly see that they're not the same.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, they did a great job, you know. Thanks a lot, they've proved big.
So I think that's what really applies to a lot of these kinds of things. People use the information they know. They're not exposed to as many different possibilities, and they reach for what they have. Now, you get into some interesting areas with that. Like, one of the areas that I've talked to a few people about is shadow people. Are you familiar with that phenomenon?
I did a summoning of 3 battalions of shadow people on a show not like this, unlike this. It was quite a while back. Freddie was on it, I was, and there was a guy called Dan Baines, and we did this big thing. And funnily enough, it was just before the celebrities started to die. So I was saying it was him. It's the shadow entities. It's the 3 battalions. He's killed all the celebrities, you know. So I thought, you know, I should do that again someday. If that's all you've got to do, you know, to get rid of all of the sort of C-list celebrities out there.
Yeah.
You know, we'll have to do... But of course it wasn't. They were summoned and they went away and things like that. It was all done properly. But, yeah, so I did this big thing with 3 battalions, not unlike the sort of things they're doing here. But, yeah, it was an interesting thing. But, like I said, the same thing. You're right, with shadow people. People tend to want to classify them, and to be honest, they're difficult to classify, because on one level they seem to be made up of negative energy. On the other level, although a lot of them are people shaped, you get all types of shapes as well. On another level, yes, they seem to be demonic in a way, but they don't really fit necessarily with other types of devils and demons, you know. They don't really fit with many demons. They're sort of a category floating on their own, to be honest. It seems like they may be partly demonic, but partly something else, you know.
Well, in the conversations I've had, there seem to be 2 sort of general kinds of encounters that people have. One is the shape, the space that a person would take up, that shows as this blackness. And sometimes they just stand there, sometimes there seems to be some motion, not necessarily interactivity. And one of the ideas that someone had about that experience was maybe they were looking at something that was sort of fading through dimensions, that it wasn't really here, it was elsewhere, but it was sort of poking through and doing its own thing in its own place, but it just showed up as a void here. Now, there's another set of stories that always tend to have a malevolent feeling to it that people do consider to be demonic. One is the Hat Man. That's one that people tend to always say something bad there, something very bad there. And it's a black shape. It tends to wear some kind of an elaborate hat, typically a top hat, but not always. And it has red eyes. Red eyes that glow out of the darkness there. It's also been seen as a dog by some of the people that I've talked to, a dog-like sort of a thing. And again, it's just this black shape, this black entity, but it has these red glowing eyes. And every time I've talked to someone who has had an encounter like that, they have no doubt that what they were looking at was something dark and dangerous. But without the red eyes, it has been whatever the encounter has been. Some people are nervous about it, but they say they didn't feel that it meant that there was nothing that made them feel it meant them harm. Not so with the Hat Man. the Hat Man was out to get him, and they knew that.
Yeah. You know, you don't seem to get as many sightings as you used to of the small ones. You used to get ones about the size of a rat, like a circle or something. You don't seem to get many of those ones, of the really low-level ones without really much power. Because you used to get those, and you used to get people saying, oh, and it was scurrying around the wall, and the shadow about maybe the size of someone's hand moving around. You don't seem to get many of those anymore. It seems to be a shift there. But again, the shadow men also fit within the concept of a genie. They sort of fit within that as well, you know. Sometimes I think you're better just working from observation, you know, and working back. But, oh yeah, they're an interesting entity to work with. And quite easy, you know, to a large degree. And some of them send them back without any problem, you know. Even if you've never done anything before, you can still do it very easy without really very much practice. They're very straightforward. But yeah, I mean, I suppose part of the interesting thing is there was recently a sighting of S. Robin Victus. I won't say where it was or who saw it, but it was one of the sightings that the people have had of him, because people are starting to get sightings of him now. And as you know, he looks basically like me. But someone saw him who used a lot of magic from my books. And they saw S. Robin Victus, they said, me, standing there, but as if there was light coming out of me, but with the shadow man moving around with a shadow, a movable shadow, like a shadow man. So he's obviously picked up a friend at some point. So he obviously doesn't see them as negative. He's picked up a friend. And so now when he's seen places, he could well be seen like this all the time. So it's a development, because the more people are using the entity, and it seems to be the more they're using my magic, the more traction he's gaining. So, you know, he was also seen in America a couple of times. I don't think he's been seen over here. He's been seen in France. But, of course, most of the sightings I won't get to hear about. But people are seeing him in different places, you know. And he seems to come sometimes as a warning before something bad's going to happen. So if something bad's going to happen, he sometimes comes first, and then he tries to stop it. So he's trying to stop it while also giving a warning. You know, so if you're going to get knocked over by a car, he would appear, and then it seems that he's obviously, I feel he's working against malevolent forces a lot of the time. And then some of the time he appears when something good's going to happen. Although that tends to be more or less, if you're not summoning him, or he's not actually working magic, he tends to work like that, so that you know. So if he appears and he looks frowny face, you know, and he looks serious, then that means, you know, you need more life insurance, you need to go and get checked up medically and all that stuff, you know. And if he appears and all like that, means something good's going to happen, you know.
Do you have an interactive connection with this entity? I mean, I'm not sure what to think of it. As a doppelganger or an astral projection of yourself? Are you connected, or is he a completely separate entity?
To a large extent, he's separate. I can communicate with him quite easily and readily. Because it's funny you mentioned doppelgangers. I used to get that a lot when I was younger. And even now, where there was women who swore that I had slept with them, and I knew for a fact, because I had never actually get that drunk. I don't, but you know, but he had. This was wicked. And women and people who have described men with the same sort of facial marks and things like this. So I've had that sort of thing for years. You know, where people were being seen places. But I feel that he's sort of me, but he's also separate, and I had to remove certain, obviously the sense of time doesn't really work with him in the same way. If he had the human sense of time, and he did get trapped somewhere, it would be terrible. But because he doesn't have the human sense of time, you can lock him in somewhere, which would be impossible, hopefully, for 1,000 years, and he can get out. And he's also been designed so that he's not really commanded, you have to ask him. And you can't really put him in a bottle, because he'll just make a doorway and walk out. He's also an instructor of the occult as well, so he can help you guard against anything going wrong. And you don't need like a lot of the time I use gateway entities to summon. You don't need to do that with him. You just need to say, S. Robin Victus, he without boundaries, he without limits, be here with me. That's pretty much it. But as I said, people do use them for magic, and a lot of the time he seems to appear to help people. It does feel like he's working against, you know, bad things. So if you do a lot of magic from my books, and something bad is going to happen, if you can't stop it, he'll appear to warn you so you can try to stop it.
Have you ever had any
a positive thing in the world.
This is not actually an extension of yourself, but in some ways it is some other entity masquerading as you, somehow drawing power and strength from what you give it and teach it?
In reality, the creation was quite straightforward. I feel it's like this. Especially if you're an occultist, if you manage to do certain things which are different for everybody, this is the result. That's what I feel. But to be honest, I never feel like he's drawing power. I don't feel weaker because he's there, or because he exists. I'm not aging faster or anything like that. It's just the same. So it's more like, see, I call them S. Rob Invictus because you've got the sun, Sol Invictus. So he can get power from the sun, he can get power from people using him, he can also get power from people using or reading the books that I've written. So, of course, he's got a lot of sources of power, and so he seems to be ticking on quite well. But there doesn't seem to be any contradiction. He seems to do a lot of the things that I do, and when he's around me, he sometimes acts in a very human way, in the same sort of things that I would do, where magical beings, whether it be devils, angels, or whatever you want to categorise them as, they tend to not really behave like us in some ways. Well, he does. It's more like a human being made out of different material, you know what I mean? Like a prom dress made out of carpet remnants. That sort of thing, he's like us, but he's made out of something else. And that's it, yeah. I feel he's a positive force in the world, and I feel he's going to be here long after I'm gone. You can never really say if anything's immortal, because you can never reach infinity. But he doesn't seem to diminish in power. His power just keeps running. And as long as there's a sun and things like this, I feel he just keep going.
So, one of the things that people come to me about when they have these encounters, they usually have a couple of different modes there. When someone tells me that they're having something that is creating a disturbance, my first question is, well, what do you want to do about that? Is this something that you want to nurture, or do you want it to go away and leave you alone? And it's funny that some people have never really thought about that. And I find a number of people that when they think about it, realize, well, I don't really necessarily want this to go away. I just want it to stop waking me up. I want it to stop, doing these things that are causing disruption. And so we determine the next steps based on whatever the goals are. What thoughts do you have about people that are having spontaneous encounters, and maybe differentiate between what might be a devil encounter and something else?
I think partly it comes down to certain things, whether the person feels that they've drained in energy, if they feel tired. Like when you get people who have been bedridden for a month or something, that's a sign if there's no reason for it. Lots of bad luck, things like this. They're more the indicators, more than the thing itself. But saying that again, it doesn't really do you any harm to push something away. I mean, to be honest, in the past, and I used to take a gentler approach. A long time ago, I used to do a gentle approach of pushing things away. My feelings now is if there is something there and somebody feels it's harmful to them, is to throw every single thing you can at it and completely destroy it. I know that sounds a little bit over the top to some people, but some of these things are very dangerous. That is sometimes simply the best way to go, is just to throw everything at it. But it basically comes down to things like, are you feeling tired? Have you been overworking, or is it just that you feel tired? Are you having a lot of bad luck? Does everything seem to be going wrong more than normal? But actually a good thing is just to look at the tiredness. How much energy do you have? And importantly, how much energy do you have when you are around it? When this entity appears, how much energy do you have? Also, do you have gaps in your memory? You know, do you forget things? But the thing is, these entities sometimes, you know, some of the ones that are basically the most demonic are the ones that look the best. Like, for instance, when I was writing the book Devil Army, I'm trying to remember what it's for, the Devil Army for Success, I think it's called. Devil Army for Power. And I wrote that one quite recently. Now, when I was working that magic, I saw quite a lot of sharp pins of light when I was working. So as I was working this magic, obviously I'm commanding devils, the 16 most powerful devils in hell. And there was pins of light when I was commanding it, flashes. You know. Now, as you know yourself, sometimes people always think of demonic as being dark, but they can be light as well, you know. I mean, Lucifer's been called the morning star, you know, the whole idea of light is linked to Lucifer to a large extent. Although not necessarily, you know, but they're not always dark. So then pins of light were representations of devils. Now, the problem is that most people would look and they'd say, oh, like, it's the fairy folk, it's the fairies. Because that's what they've been told. They've been taught by all the stuff and all the animated cartoons and things that it's Tinkerbell. Look at that, it's Tinkerbell with our friends. And it wasn't, it was an army of devils. You know, there were 16 of the most powerful devils in hell, but, you know, you wouldn't necessarily react and say, oh my God, you know, because people have been taught through a lot of these films that these things aren't scary. The horror films are less of a problem, it's more the other stuff that teaches you that all this stuff must be fine. And don't get me wrong, we live in a world of many different types of entities, and that's just the way it works, you know. Things do come through, things do leave, you know. That's just the way it works. But to some extent, you've got to hold your borders to some extent, you know. But like I said, sometimes it's just a matter of it's better to push them away if you feel you're drained than if you're not. Because in this case, of course, they're all under my control. But that isn't, of course, to say that if someone else saw a pin of light or a flash of light, that they would assume that it was anything supernatural. I think a lot of people would just assume that a small pin of light or a small flash of light was nothing of any importance because it's not what they expect. But if you think about it, it's light. Light isn't just supposed to come from nowhere, you know. It's supposed to come from a place, it's supposed to be a bulb or something. When there's just a flash, you know, that's a serious thing. So generally speaking, I would say, if you haven't sent it, and, you know, and if you feel tired, then you're probably better getting rid of it, you know, generally speaking, because it comes down to holding your borders. We've got to hold the borders of this world. I mean, yes, I summon things through and I send things back. And, I mean, while we're doing this, this room is being transported, at least partially, you know, the border thin between here and hell. And it's being broadcast into hell. But we still have to hold our borders, you know. We've still got to, from time to time, say, you know, this isn't allowed, you have to go back. They're not all nice, this is Earth. You know. Because you know, they're not all nice. This is Earth.
What do you think about making deals with the devil? Extent.
Yeah, I've known people that have done that, and unless you do it just right, it can work out very badly. Because the thing is, Saul, most people don't know how to get out of these deals. And there's nearly always a way out of anything, but unfortunately, I'm the guy who has to untie the knots. You know, I've untied a number of these knots for people where it's went bad, you know. I mean, you've got to know just what you're doing, you know. In theory, once you've got what you want, then everything's fine, but the trouble is people tend to draw a lot on the horror films. Although I said they're not a problem, the problem is, in horror films, they want the worst, darkest possible way of doing it. So they tend to say, okay, I'm not just going to ask the devil for something and give him a coconut, or what I want, or some flowers or whatever. Instead, I'm going to give my soul to him, so I will have whatever they want, you know. And the thing is, you've then got the attention of the devil. Now, unless you're actually an occultist, and you get people who haven't actually got any books on the occult at all, they've got a small text file. And they think, well, if I do this, I've got this small text file of a couple hundred words, and I do this, it'll be fine. But no, because then you've got you've then got the attention of the devil, and the devil can appear if he wants to, he can be summoned, but at the end of the day, he's the devil, he still has some power. And they don't really know what to do. They then think, now what do I do? Because you're not supposed to start off day one selling your soul to the devil. If you choose to do it, you do it at some point down the line, but you don't want to start off day one. But I really feel that it's best not to sell your soul as such. I did do something with soul renting, and that was things like this. Or when you really do an offering. Many people call a pact now where you do an offering to something, like an altar. And you can make an altar easy. You need a centerpiece of some sort, whether it be a sculpture or easily is just something printed out from the internet. Write the name of the entity on the bottom, put it in a frame that stands up. That's an important point. You need to get a frame that stands up, because some of them don't. And then you just get a couple of candles at the side, you put a plate at the front, and then you may want to do it as a ritual, to summon the entity, and just in case it isn't actually in the altar, like it should be. And then you do the ritual, and then you put the altar, you put the offering on the plate, and you leave it, and that's it. And that's a far better way of doing it. If someone says, maybe I should, sell my soul, that's a better way of doing it, is to make an altar and just give them something, Trying to see what you can get for, I don't know, like for an apple first before you try giving your soul, if he's not going to give you anything for an apple, he's not going to give you anything for your soul. That's the way it works, But it's a difficult knot to untie, because people, they tie some really complicated knots. Because when it doesn't work, you'd think they'd say, oh, well, I'll leave that. They do what they try then is they try selling the soul to other entities. So they go through a number and they sell it till they've sold it to so many demons that they're in such a knot that it becomes extremely difficult to get them out of it. Yeah, but that's what I have to do. but it's difficult, best not to do it. Don't sell your soul. No. Not even... Yeah.
So if the people listening right now, someone knocks on your door selling something, don't buy.
Exactly, yeah. Precisely. Especially not for beer. Don't trade it for beer. I know that may seem a good idea at the time. You say, soul for beer. You think, well, I've never really used my soul. I don't think. What important is it? How much beer is it? Are we talking an endless amount of beer? Yeah.
Well, and I like what you've described there. I think that there is not just one pathway to connecting with entities, and even devils and angels, I think, are not necessarily the way many of us think of them. And you have to learn to trust your own intuition, to trust your own feelings about what you're encountering. And if it's something that you're not ready for, you're not comfortable with it, send it away. I tend to still be on the gentler side of sending things away, unless it doesn't take. But start by being nice. Start by being polite. And if that doesn't work, you ramp it up, certainly. But also, I think that people should be more open to interaction and connection. And I wonder if some of the stories that have been passed down warning people are not written by the powerful to retain those services for themselves.
Yeah, it is true. There's a lot of information which was hidden in the past. Actually, the best way to get information, hidden information in the occult, isn't just to go through all the old grimoires, but to look through the folk tales. Because if you know about the occult, you'll find there's loads of hidden information in these folk tales. They don't give you everything you need, but they tell you what's there. Because that's what you do. It's a folk tale. If you're going to put something in, they put in the things that were important at the time that they knew. So when it was suppressed at a later date, You know, it's still in the stories. You know, but you got to go back to the original. You got to go back to the old tales. You know, like 15th, 16th, 17th century. Not necessarily back before that, but to that period. And then you find loads of stuff in these stories you don't find elsewhere, you know. Like, for instance, there's a Russian folk tale, I can't remember what it was, but it's the first time I actually saw, first time that actually a mention of anything, which is basically a voodoo doll. And a lot of people have linked voodoo dolls with, you know, voodoo. In actual fact, I couldn't find anything earlier than this Russian folktale, and it goes right the way back a long way, which means that voodoo dolls probably came from European folk magic, as opposed to coming from the African tradition. It probably came from Europe to there, which is a completely different way, you know. But you get many things that cross over in folklore as well. Like there's something called the Leshy. And it is described in folklore, in like Slavic Russian folklore, also in, I think there's a Welsh folklore as well. I wrote a paper on it. And what you find is, it's the earliest, but certainly the earliest sighting that I could find of a type of genie, what was described as a genie in Afghanistan and Somalia. But the thing is, it's not a type of genie that isn't in the Quran, it's from folklore. And the earliest description I could find was in this folktale. Which means that the idea that something is only in one part of the world, it sort of really gets rid of that whole idea. Because you've got something they're labelling as a type of genie in Russia and in Wales, and I would imagine other parts of Europe, which tends to mean that these things are travelling. They're everywhere and they travel around. So it also means that what's classed as a genie one place could be a demon somewhere else and something else somewhere else. So what they think of themselves of, however, is probably completely different entirely.
Well, yeah, and they will have their own regional tales and their own regional descriptions and names.
Yeah.
And we just assume that they are indigenous.
Exactly, yeah.
To a certain area.
Yeah. I mean, I actually find that if you can contact some of these entities, and you can, like when I use a scrying mirror, you can sometimes contact them. And I sometimes do that when I'm writing a book. If I do, I normally write it in the book. But what you generally find is, when you're summoning it through, is it isn't exactly the same as you describe it. So, you know, you tend to get, oh no, there's different tribes, and we're this tribe, and I'm of this tribe, and there's a tribe over here, and this tribe is, you know, is like this, and they used to be on water, and then they decided they weren't going to be on water. You know, they changed. You know, and this one used to be underground, and now they live in Vegas or something. You know, you tend to get a completely different picture to what, you know, you get. It seems to be like the picture that you get most of the time from the occult is about a few hundred years old at least. So in that few hundred years, you tend to find they've done something else, or some of them have, you know, just as we do.
Well, and accurately describing things, that's a very specialized skill. And when you talk about these kinds of encounters, there's a part of it that requires a very scientific mind to accurately capture the facts.
Yeah.
What color was it? What did it do? Where did it stand?
Yeah.
What are all of the material descriptions of this? But then there is an experiential and emotional part of this encounter that I don't think you can completely separate.
No.
And that requires the skill of a poet. And it's very unusual to find someone who has a poetic, scientific mind.
Yeah, that's why I feel the occult isn't like other forms of non-fiction. Because the old thing was, people always used to assume that non-fiction is really like journalism. I mean, I don't really think that's true. But with the occult, you're dealing with concepts, and the paranormal as well, you're dealing with concepts that are so strange that it's something distinct and separate on its own, you know. But that isn't strange in itself. I mean, if you look back to journalism in the Victorian period, it wasn't anything like it is now. because they were starting it off more or less. They didn't know what it was supposed to be like, you know. Like, for instance, people say one of the first gonzo journalists, I'm trying to remember his name now, but he was an American. But if you look back at the old articles of Aleister Crowley, the old newspaper columns, it's obvious he was a gonzo journalist. He wasn't talking about what was happening. He was talking about things he was doing, things he probably wasn't doing, you know, just like the gonzo journalists do, where they feel that there isn't any, that you can't be neutral, that you have to have an opinion, you know. And that's part of the story. So there's nothing really new, is there really, I suppose, but it's, you know, it's its own area, its own way of doing things as well. But if I get something from an entity, unless I'm writing a book just of that entity, I always make it clear that that is the opinion of this particular one. That if you asked again, you got a different one, you may get a different answer. You know, that it's more like an interview. I'm getting this information from this one, which gives us a small amount of the picture. You know, I don't like to try and make the mistake that other occultists have made, where they're trying to give the impression that they know everything. Do you know what I mean, Saul?
Sure.
Yeah, where, you know, we know what all of hell is like. Well, you can't really. We don't even know what all of the earth is like, you know. We've got ideas and we've got places we've seen, but it's a big place, you know. Where they like to give the impression that there's no possibility of error. Where to remove error, of course, what you do is you only say as much as you can. You know, I don't really say more than or should I say, I don't say more than the facts lead me to. You know, because it's easy to astral project into a part of hell and say, well, this bit is sand, so all of this of hell is sand. But you don't. You've just seen one part. You know, you can't really extrapolate that far.
Well, I think one of the things that enters into this, and this goes back to what we were talking about at the beginning, the desire to catalog and categorize and define all of these things in a sort of scientific manner. And the phenomenon where people seem to encounter the same things differently, that I mean, there's that scientific concept of by observing something, you alter it. And that seems to be dramatically increased when we're talking about dealing with some of these entities, that you could encounter an entity and I could encounter the same entity and we would both experience it differently.
Yeah, that's true. It's really just a matter of bearing in mind that what you're dealing with is human experience. And I know a lot of people don't understand that concept. I know we do, but some people don't. But in many ways, it's based on, I suppose, the concept of the mathematician, I'm trying to think of his name now. Yeah, René Descartes. It was the idea that I can know that I am real because I'm thinking, but the world around me may not be real, it could be imaginary. So all I really know is that I am real, and that, or rather, that part of me that thinks is real. Now, if we go a little bit further and we assume I know a little bit more, then all I can really know is human experience. That what I can experience, I can't really know anything more than that. So I've got to bear everything in mind that it's my personal experience and you have your experience. Now, I know in many ways people feel this is in some ways an attack on science, but it's actually not. Because, as we both know, statistics are very important in science. You know, you need to have observation, you need to get statistical information in order to do anything, you know. So they know about the idea that, you know, of uncertainty. But other people don't. I think some people tend to get the idea that some of these things are rock solid, and there's very few, if any, rock solid things. And it's just a matter of dealing with that idea of uncertainty, you know. But that's real. That's the world's an uncertain place, you know. You could see something, as you say, you describe it as this, I describe it as that. And, you know, but the same happens with crimes, you know. You get people to have a bank robbery, you get people to describe them, they all describe different people, you know. It happens, it's just the way it is.
Yes. Well, I think in general that people need to be less afraid of these kinds of connections. I like your description of imagining hell as simply another country, and thinking of some of these other entities as being maybe other styles of existence, like they were from another country. And one should be cautious about encountering another culture, because that can be dangerous. If you don't know the rules, if you don't know the taboos, you can accidentally get yourself into a lot of trouble. But at the same time, as you go into these connections openly, you learn a lot about other possibilities and other modes that you may not agree with, you may not incorporate, but then again, you might find something that adds to your existence. It's not cultural appropriation if your life is enriched by it. That used to be a big idea, was that people were supposed to travel and encounter different cultures and learn about different ways of being. And it's not as popular as it was at one time, possibly just because people can't afford it as much. But when we talk about these virtual connections and these spiritual connections, we can do the same thing, and perhaps we should.
Yeah, I agree completely. I think that is one of the main benefits of occultism, is that people get to experience these things that they normally wouldn't do. Which leads us nicely onto the last ritual, because it's a good time for people to have a look around, to see if anything's changed or altered outside. Because we shouldn't forget, as we're doing this, this is being broadcast into hell, and the rooms are being, or at least the outside of the room has the border thinned. So it's perfectly possible that some people may be, as it is now, their room will be outside, will be completely 100% hell. Some people it won't. But it's interesting if anyone's had any sounds or any knocks at all. That's interesting. If anyone looks out of the window and see if they can see anything, I'll have a quick look outside. It seems to look more or less the same. It's difficult to tell. But, that's an interesting thing as well. If anyone can gather what information they've got, send it in, because it's all very interesting. It's all interesting, paranormal research.
Well, and yes, anyone who experiences something while they listen to this broadcast, part of our goal is to share the information, but also to learn from what we're doing by spreading it out. So anyone listening who has some kind of an experience, please share it with us. You can put it in the comments of the video on the site that you're looking at, or there should be contact information where you're seeing the video. Send us information, because we would also like to share the experiences that people are having. The whole point of the World Magic movement is to move, and we want you to be a part of that. So if you experience anything, share it with us so we can examine it and hopefully spread it to other people who want to share in that or understand it better.
Okay, and now we're going to go to the back ritual. Okay, I'm now going to do the last segment, and this is to put the border between hell and where we are, our earth, firmly back into place. Okay, I'm going to do that now. Hermes, powerful Greek god. All borders are yours to control, and you are a guide to the underworld. Hermes, I ask that you thicken the border again. Thicken the border between this realm, the realm of earth, and hell. Thicken the border more. Thicken the border so that it is solid once more. Hermes thickens the border. He thickens the border between earth and hell. He thickens the border and it is solid once more. So it is and will be.
This has been the World Magic Movement with S. Rob, Saul Ravencraft, Freddie Valentine. Produced by S. Rob. Music, A Dark Blue Ark by Pipe Choir. Find them at freemusicarchive.org. This program is licensed for sharing under the Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, Share-alike 4.0 International. For more details about usage and sharing, see links in the program description or visit creativecommons.org. This program is licensed by Werevamp Media Limited. See program description for additional links to guest sites and supporting information.